Bhadrang karnevi shrunuyama devaha Bhadram pashyemakshabhiryajatraha Sthirairangai estuštuvagam sastanubhihi Yashema devahitayadayuhu. May we hear with our ears what is auspicious. May we see with our eyes what is auspicious. May we enjoy with strong limbs and bodies the life allotted to us. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us all. The reality of the infinite. Actually, it's the existence of the finite that requires proof. The infinite is self-existent. The infinite is self-evident. That we don't understand. But really speaking, everything that we experience is an experience without limits. You cannot put a boundary to anything without immediately, as soon as you put a boundary to something, this is finite, you are immediately asserting the infinity. Because there can be no boundary without something outside the boundary. So every boundary that we draw immediately asserts with the same statement that there is something outside the boundary. And this goes on infinitely. Wherever we draw the line, however far, however wide we make it, the drawing of any line or the stating the assertion that anything is finite immediately implies the existence of infinity. So if we think about it in those terms a little, we find that definitely really, it's the finite that we want an explanation of, not the infinite. The infinite is self-evident. The infinite is always experienced. We never experience anything but the infinite. The title is The Reality of the Infinite. Really, we're never experiencing, because our outlook is shrunk to a certain smaller diameter, we think that that's all there is, but the ability to even define anything finite implies that we are looking at from an infinite, an unlimited standpoint. Now, the only question is what you call this infinite. Whether you call it God and assume a certain description or characterization or some further identification of what you mean by God. Whatever name you give to it, the fact that it exists is indisputable, and you can try to dispute it, but if you think about it in this type of term, it will generally seem quite reasonable, quite appropriate that the infinite must exist. Now, normally we live our life with the consciousness of only finite things. I want to do this, I don't want to do that. this is a problem, that is not a problem. So our life is totally involved with the conception of the finite, different aspects of that which is finite. And so we assume that that's all there is to it, that there's no finite. Or if we assume that there is an infinite background to our finite experiences of daily life, we assume that it is material, that it is something to do with matter, space, energy, purpose, cause. In other words, even that infinite outside our finite experience, even that infinite we people with finite ideas. So we're absolutely determined that we're going to be finite and we're going to think about the finite only, and we're going to reject the existence of the infinite altogether. We're determined that way. Otherwise, why should we so rebel against or demand a description, a definition of God, or an idea of what we call the infinite, the eternal? We want to be precise in terms of the infinite and the eternal, as though we can surround it with a finite intellect and a finite system of approach. Anyway, the Swami Vivekananda once described this. He said, man, the infinite dreamer, dreaming finite dreams, insisting not only dreaming finite dreams, which could be acceptable, but we insist that that's the only thing that exists. We don't give God even half a chance to manifest in our lives. We insist that everything that happens to us comes from a finite cause. And we refuse to take into account the larger picture. That is a definite shortcoming. I mean, if we make any assertions in the field of religion as to whether something is true or not true, something is acceptable or not acceptable, oh, I don't like this, I don't go that far. Certain practices, worship, I don't believe in worship, I believe in self-knowledge. I am that. And the idea of a deity defined in a finite way seems unsuitable to us. But that is what is unreasonable. It's not at all unreasonable to assume an infinite reality within which all finiteness is immersed, which is every finite aspect has the infinite as its essence, as its background, as its cause, as its effect, as its reality. Because once you put any validity to the infinite, it has to pervade our life infinitely. That is, of course, the danger, and that's probably why people object to or have many reservations against the idea of God or Brahman, Atman, the infinite, all these ideas. They have strong reservations. No, I will not accept that. I want science only. I want something which can be proved in detail the way science proves things. But the basic axioms of science are unsupportable. You cannot really define what you mean by the finite, the reality of the finite, unless you bring that which always surrounds the finite. Until you bring that into the picture, you cannot even define the finite. So if you say, no, I will accept only these things which I can prove in a very concrete, satisfactory way, we forget the idea that the basic reality we cannot prove. The basic reality, which is at the back of all proof, is not itself provable in the same way that we manage to prove certain finite constructions. Swami Vivekananda said, "Man, the infinite dreamer, dreaming finite dreams." This is the position we find ourselves in. These are finite dreams, so that the finite is a dream. It works in a certain limited sphere. I mean, when I go from one place to another, I can get into the car and I can put it in gear and I can go and I can see a red light there and I stop and it turns green and I go. I see there's certain rules of traffic and I obey all these things and I feel I'm fully in control of the situation, and I go from point A to point B and do item number 1, number 2, number 3. I do all the items that I have to do, without realizing that all of this depends for its validity on the existence of the infinite in every aspect of the finite. So now you say, okay, this is all theoretical and it's all, it has perhaps some, if you're generous enough, you will allow some degree of validity to what I have said, or at least as an assumption. You can assume that what I've been describing has some degree of validity. And then you are going to ask, well, what is the proof that this is true? What is the proof of the reality of the infinite? So the Upanishads talk about it in a number of different ways. And one of the most interesting ways, I have mentioned it before, but one of the most interesting ways is found in the Chandogya Upanishad. And it sounds very simplistic in a way until you really think about the implications of it. So this student, after having studied for many years, returns home to his father, and his father finds him very conceited, very proud, very satisfied with his knowledge. What does he know? He knows all the Vedas, and he knows all the sciences of his day, and all the arts and crafts or whatever. He's fully instructed in all of this. So his father asks him, well, my dear boy, now that you are, he says, Shvetaketu, dear boy, you, I see, are conceited, arrogant, regarding yourself as very learned. Well, that's kind of our position. I'm not accusing anyone in particular, mind you, but in general, that is kind of our position. Then he asked, dear boy, did you ask for that teaching through which what is unheard becomes heard, what is unthought becomes thought of, what is unknown becomes known? And the boy had to admit, no, his teachers taught him all the Vedas and all the sciences of that were current in his day, but they didn't mention anything like that. So he becomes intrigued and he says, well, what is it? What is this? What is this that you're describing? Then the father puts or makes a statement which I think must be one of the profoundest scientific descriptions of the universe. Though we're very proud of our atoms and protons, neutrons, and wave theories and particle theories and quarks and all these other things that science has discovered. We're very proud of that. And we've gone on and on and on in our own way until we've come to things like vibrating strings as being the very basis of this whole universe. And of course, nobody thinks that that's anything unusual. Oh yeah, vibrating string, oh yes, it's good. And this, it would be, I mean, they have done it scientifically. It's been analyzed. It's never been proven. It cannot be proven because these vibrating strings are much smaller than anything that can even be theoretically discovered, analyzed, or proved. But that sort of thing, many eminent scientists have taken that as a very acceptable, very reasonable description of reality, even though they admit that there's no way to ever, even in principle, prove it. And that's all right. They have their own reasons, and they're following a trend of thought, which they have very carefully constructed, and it is good. It is a definitely seriously thought out concept. But the one trouble is it doesn't go far enough because it depends only on the existence of the material. It completely and deliberately ignores the existence of the spiritual reality. God is not a subject of scientific investigation, according to the scientists. But here, this father tells his son what is the basis for everything, which is what these scientists are trying to discover. So he goes through 3 very simple examples. And you say, well, that's totally simplistic. He should have a big laboratory with hundreds of millions of dollars worth of equipment and very up-to-date modern methods of discovering the reality of things. But he said in a very simple way, he says, just as through a single clod of clay, all that is made of clay would be known, for all modification is but name based upon words, and the clay alone is real. So we say, okay, yeah, well, but how does that show anything profound? Undeterred by our implied objections, the father goes on, dear boy, just through a single ingot of gold, all that is made of gold would become known, for all modification is but name based upon words, and gold alone is real. Okay, well, that's the same example, but we haven't gotten any farther along in our explanation. So the boy, by implication, asks, or apparently needs more instruction, so the father tells him a third example. Dear boy, just as through a single instrument of steel, a nail cutter, even in those days they had nail cutters. This was thousands of years ago. As through a single nail parer, all that is made of iron would become known, for all modification is but name based upon words, and the iron alone is real. Such, dear boy, is that teaching. So the implication is, this is the profound statement that the boy was, and we also are looking for. So the question is, what is profound about all of this? Really, this is one of the subtlest ways of understanding what all of the scriptures are trying to explain. This is one of the oldest of the Upanishads. And by that method, it has basically shown us or given us a clear indication of where to look to find that fundamental reality. And how do you explain that? Well, all these things are made of gold. You've got a whole array of them. Say you've got a necklace, an earring, a ring, a plate. You've got all these things. And the thing is, what is true about all these things? See, our investigation is we want to know what is real. We want to know what is true. We want to know what is fundamental. We want to know what is ultimate. That is in the heart of human beings. That is the heart. That is the core of what human beings really want. They want to know. They want to understand. Swami Vivekananda made a strong point of that. It is knowledge that we're after. It is not enjoyment, satisfaction of, in a finite way. It is not anything finite at all. It is not a temporary or a partial thing. It is knowledge itself. We want to know. So what is the ultimate of knowledge? What is the ultimate that can be known? So here are all these ornaments made of gold. What is true about them? Now you can spend all your time taking each ornament and measuring it carefully, dissecting it, cutting it in various ways, putting it in fire, doing this and all that. Then you try to find out what this gold is. You put it under a microscope. Then you put it under an electron microscope. Then you bombard it with atomic particles in a particle accelerator. I mean, they didn't have those things in those days, but that's how we would approach it. And what would we learn? We would learn all the details about the gold. Every little aspect we would know. But we would still not know exactly what this gold is. Having described it in all different ways, we have still not answered the fundamental question, what is it? We can only say what is it made of. We take it apart, and it's made of this and that. We take this apart, and it's made of something else. And we keep on doing that. But we never really come to the question of what it is. Now, the method of every perception is what we're after. And the teacher is making this point that the gold it's true about all these different ornaments. It's not the shape and the form and the function. All we examine is shape, form, function, and the name. But what is the truth about it? The truth about it is the gold. All right, here are all these things made of cups and bowls, and maybe different types of clay are used, and all these different things are there. Well, what is the truth about them all? Not the name, the form, the shape, or anything. What is true about them? It's all clay. Things made of steel, different shapes and form. Name, form, function. That changes drastically. And all of our effort is to examine name, form, and function. The whole of science in a practical way, except a small part of it which is devoted to fundamental things. But even they approach it in that way. The whole approach is to study name, form, function. But they don't get an answer as to what it really is, because the reality of it is gold. The name, form, and function are different. But that's what's on the surface. So all of our research is essentially what is examining what is on the surface. Okay, great. Now you've told about gold, you've told about clay, you've told about iron, but what does that have to do with us? the very profound reality, the very essence, it has to do with us. It goes to the very heart of things. Because what is my experience of this world? Name, form, function. I have different names, different people are here, different names, different forms, different functions. I have furniture, I have buildings, I have, and also in the psychological realm, I have different ideas. These ideas are intended to inspire us in this way or that way, to teach us this or teach us that. It's always name, form, function that we're dealing with. That is our universe. And as long as we study the universe only by looking at name, form, function, we're not going to discover the essence. So this teacher is telling the student, the essence of all these things made of gold or of clay or of iron is not their name, form, function. The essence is, in each case, is what it really is made of. The essence of all the different gold objects is gold. So, okay, great, fine, okay, we admit that. Now get to the truth of the matter. What is it that this is supposed to teach us? Each one of us differs in name, form, function, but our reality is God, the infinite, the eternal, Brahman, whatever name you want to give it. So, the essence of approaching life, approaching all problems, approaching all of the various things that we do, is not contained in the name, form, function that totally fills our lives. Name, form, function is what completely is what we deal with. And so therefore we never come to the reality of every perception, pratibodha viditam, it is to be seen in every perception. What is to be seen? That infinite background, that infinite reality, which is without form, without name, without function, but is the support of all these names, forms, and functions. What we're looking for in our life, whatever we do, whether it's a job and all the things associated with our jobs, our professions, whether it is the spiritual practices we do, whether it is the families we come from or the families we ourselves raise, what is it that we're after in doing anything that we do? Our purpose is not, I mean, we on the surface, yes, we take care of name, form, function in a very detailed, very expert, very thorough way. But the real essence of what we're after is what each of these things really is. What is it? What is every perception, every experience? What is it really? Aside its name, form, function, that is God, that is the infinite, that is Brahman, that is Atman, it is all these names. God has been given so many names, 1,000 names of Vishnu, all of that. In other words, whatever happens in this world, whatever we deal with, whatever we experience is God alone. So the experience, the title today is The Reality of the Infinite. And the statement is that there is nothing in our life that is real except that infinite background, infinite substance. Everything, our families, for instance, are very precious to us, very helpful, very meaningful, very significant. But the essence of the family is the infinity that is present in a beautiful way in each one of them. Swami Vivekananda made great efforts to bring this idea out, that it is not for the sake, this comes from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, it is not for the sake of the husband that the husband is loved. It is for the sake of the self, the Atman, the infinite within the husband, that the husband is loved. Of course, there's another interpretation that says it is for our own, because of our own self, our own desire to see the self, that we see the self in others. But in any case, the point is that the reason we do things is not for the things themselves, is not because we want to accomplish this, have a great career, doing this or that, or raise a wonderful family, doing, and everything we do for that, or sacrifice ourselves for a great cause. It is not just for that. It is for the sake of, we want to realize the infinite, the eternal, the totally perfect, the totally, that which is the totality of everything, by doing every finite thing that we do. And that is already there. If it were not for the fact that we perceive the Atman, we perceive Brahman, we perceive God in other people, we would not want to do anything for them. That is the statement that is made. That is, it's not really that we should want to see the gold in all the objects made of gold, that we want to see the divinity in everyone that we deal with. It is not that we actually want to do that, yearn to do that, and sort of desperately figure that this is a way to find fulfillment. No, it's based upon the fact that we do see it. If we did not actually see God present everywhere, without admitting it in an intellectual way, see, the trouble is the intellect gets in the way. Intellectually, the intellect, Swami Vivekananda called it the policeman. You see, the intellect enables us to say, oh, that thing is red over there. Well, now I'd better step on the brakes and stop this car because that has a significance. That is the role of the intellect, to navigate us through the path of life in a way that's going to fulfill our purpose. And it's wonderful. It's got a great role for doing that, and it should be cultivated and sharpened and honed to precision. That's great. But the intellect is not going to explain why a mother loves her child. No, you could say, all right, well, the child was born from her and she carried the child and then, she saw it grow up and all of that. That is, from one level explanation, that is fine. That's no problem. But we're looking for fundamental things now. And it's not the fundamental reason, as is stated by these seers, and not only the ancient seers, but also the modern ones. It is because we have that intuition of the presence of infinity, divinity in those we love. It is for the sake of the Atman that the mother loves her child. She sees the Atman in the child. The husband loves his wife. And that we love all the worlds. Sarvam, the Upanishad goes on to say it is for the sake of it is not for the sake of the worlds that the worlds are loved. Now we've got a lot of things, a lot of people are emphasizing ecology and preservation of the world and the stopping of heating of the planet and so forth. It is wonderful. It is very good. It's self-sacrificing. It's dedicating oneself to a great ideal. That is all fine. But it is not the heart of the reason. It's not the core reason. The core reason is because we perceive an infinite, divine, utterly sweet and marvelous reality in every perception. And the Upanishads point this out. And this analogy of the gold and the clay and the iron, that is a quote from the Chandogya Upanishad, also gives us 3 examples of exactly what we're talking about. It is not for the sake of the husband that the husband is loved, it's for the sake of God, the infinite, the eternal, who is in that he is loved. So these are this is the core that the Upanishads point out. Sri Ramakrishna put it in a different way. There are 5 things here. There's name and form. Actually, you could have said 6. Name, form, function are here. Then there are 3 more. Satchid Ananda, existence, consciousness, bliss. Those 3 are point to the reality of Brahman, the reality that underlies everything. So when we're supposed to be talking about the reality of the infinite, the reality of the infinite means we are perceiving the infinite all the time. We are perceiving God all the time. We are perceiving Brahman, Atman all the time. And it is impacting our lives. If you, for instance, you go along and something worries you, and some problem has come up, then suddenly you get an idea that will solve that problem, that somehow that idea manages to envelop the problem in such a way that the whole thing disappears. And you say, oh, that's wonderful, wonderful. You might ascribe it to the grace of God, maybe. But somehow this idea has come and you're able to solve this problem, which was such a mountain in your path. Suddenly that mountain just dissolves and disappears. Where did that come from? Oh, well, I had an idea. Suddenly the idea came. But what is the meaning of that? I had an idea. Where did an idea came to me? Where did this idea come from? See, somehow our vision is so limited to the finite, we are not allowing the infinite to come in any sense. But every perception is a perception of the infinite. Every thought has the infinite as the screen. It's like in a movie theater, you're looking at the screen and you're seeing all these things. The reality of what you're seeing has nothing to do with what you're seeing. You see yourself falling over Niagara Falls or something like that, but you're sitting in your seat. So the reality that you're seeing on the screen is very superficial glaze, which somehow captivates our minds. But the reality of it is you're looking at a piece of cloth illuminated by different colors of light. So our daily life is like this. We're seeing God alone. There's nothing else that really the essence of every perception we're seeing. There's an example in, of course, I don't know how many of you know this German delicacy called marzipan. It's I mean, they do this in Germany. They make, basically it's an almond confection, almond paste and some flavors in it. And they make little houses and little people, and they paint them with different colors. So you've got a whole assemblage, you've got a whole village. And, you admire all that, but actually, it's marzipan. So, if you admire it for a while, you can take it and then you can just eat the whole thing up. No problem at all. You don't take it seriously. But we take this life very seriously. And it should be taken seriously on the physical level, absolutely. But the whole thing changes when you put the background in place. Sri Ramakrishna said, you can have a string of zeros as long as you want. The net result is still zero. But you put one stroke in front of it, you put a 1 in front of that whole string of zeros, and it becomes a huge number, tremendously valuable and significant. This is basically our position also. Because our life is based, each one of the things the finite things that we deal with, if you don't put the infinite background, if you don't put the Spirit, if you don't put God into this, if you don't say, this is really my perception of something far more profound than the surface, if you're only looking at the surface, it's a string of zeros. We live for a certain time, and all these experiences come to us, and then we pass away, and everything is gone, we think. Of course, the Bhagavad Gita explains in detail, yes, we come again. But we come again to finish what we had not finished before. But nothing more fundamental is going to be achieved until we go to the real essence of what it is that we're looking at. Every experience is an experience of God. Where is God? The answer is, where is God not? There is nothing that reality that is not fully pervaded by that reality. That is the statement that religion makes. And all religions make it in their own way, with their own language. God is present everywhere. Where is God? If you ask someone, where is God, he will give a description as valid according to that particular philosophy, that particular religion. This is the understanding of the Upanishads, that it is for the sake of the Atman that everything is love. We perceive the Atman everywhere. I mean, in that silly way, we perceive all these little houses and so forth made of marzipan. It is for the sake of the marzipan that we're interested. It's not great art. We're not examining, it's not that we love these little things that are made of it. It's because we know it's marzipan and eventually we're going to eat it and it'll be wonderful. So it's for the sake of that reality that everything is done. So what is our obligation? What should we do? We should perceive that reality everywhere. We should, in every perception, we should feel the presence of God. And that is not that difficult. Say, oh, it'll take me many incarnations to realize these profound things, and so many births I have to take and before I can appreciate these things. If that were true, then there would be something very wrong with that picture. But it is not true. You can see it right now. If you could not see the reality of something more profound than the surface, then everything becomes meaningless, because on the surface of things everything comes and everything goes. There's no fundamental, there's no really fundamental purpose for anything of that sort. So that is what the Upanishads are trying to tell us. That is what the scriptures of the world are trying to tell us. So this is the basic teaching of all the religions. That, see, otherwise, if you talk about God, if you have a spiritual tradition that speaks about an entity that can never be realized, then there's something very wrong with that. But every religion has produced saints and sages, which shows that the reality, that religions are not talking about a reality that is impossible to achieve, or that is imaginary, or that it is something that everyone is capable of appreciating, of understanding, of realizing. And as long as you don't make an effort in that direction, life is not very meaningful. I mean, you can spend your life for a noble purpose, let's say a noble national purpose, a noble local purpose, sacrificing your life for so many things. That is wonderful. That is, that is highly praised, and justifiably so. Because if one sacrifices oneself, one's small self, for something larger, something more significant. So in that same way, there should be an attempt to sacrifice ourselves for the infinite that is already fully present everywhere, that is fully at the heart of every perception. There are so many quotations in the Upanishads that describe all of these ideas. But this father, when he was talking to his son, after he had explained to him the essence, that there was an essence to this, as from different things made of gold, the essence, the truth of it is that is the gold in them. So then he gives it, because this just simply declares the method of procedure, to see that the reality we're trying to reach, to see that everywhere. So then the father explains that it is Sat, it is existence, Sat Chit Ananda Sat, the existence. Existence we normally think of as something which is, it's just the name. We don't understand it really as a quality itself. But existence, that quality of pure existence, also implies consciousness. And that consciousness, without any bounds, a boundless consciousness, is also joy, Ananda. So this is the basis for this triple description of that reality as Sat Chit Ananda, existence. The existence of everything that exists is a manifestation of that reality. There's only one reality at the basis, that is the Atman, the self. And it's manifested in so many ways. There's only one marzipan is there, but it's manifested as so many different types of candy. Madame Tussauds wax museum, that's all wax, but manifested in so many different forms. So Sat, existence of anything, also implies the consciousness of it. If something existed and it's inconceivable for something to exist that should not be accessible to consciousness. In other words, the fact that anything exists, that you know that something exists, implies that knowledge implies consciousness. And that knowledge, that consciousness, that isness, it implies total satisfaction because it is the reality of everything. There's nothing nothing else. There's no second to destroy that unruffled witnessing, that unruffled consciousness. So it also implies ananda, joy. So that which is existence implies consciousness. That which is existence and consciousness implies ananda, joy. So what is it that we're looking for in life? Mainly we want ananda. And where do we experience it? We experience it every day when we are in that state we call deep sleep. We experience this. There are no things there, but there's infinite bliss there, because when we wake up, we remember it as that. So it is not things that give us happiness. It is the perception of that infinite reality that underlies everything. The fact that right now we're looking at all these ornaments made of gold, and it only brings up greed. We want those things. But knowing the essence, the foundation, is what gives us that satisfaction, that foundation, we are that foundation, we are that reality. And being that reality, there's no coming or going, there's no death there. And the question still is, can we experience that now? Can we experience it ourselves? Are we able to actually reach that reality? And that is the theme of all spiritual practice. That is the theme of everything that we're trying to do, whether it's meditation or worship or selfless work. It is not for the sake of the work that we're doing this. It's for the sake of perceiving what is really here that we're doing this. And if the emphasis on selflessness comes because if the work is for our own self, for our own purpose, for a limited purpose, then it will cease to have that infinite aspect. It will hide that infinite aspect from us. So we say our work should be for the sake of God. It should be for the sake of perceiving the infinity, perceiving the Atman, perceiving the reality. It should be for that we work. We don't work to accomplish things. We accomplish things during the course of the work, but we don't work to accomplish things. We should work, we should do everything that we do for the sake of the Atman within, for the sake of a clearer and ever clearer perception of the reality, for the sake of selflessness. Selflessness means I. As long as I is involved, this limited entity, it can be for practical purpose, you do that. But ultimately I should feel myself filled with something unbounded. I should feel myself filled with that infinite, whatever name we want to give it. We are deliberately putting our hands, Swami made this point, we're putting our hands in front of our eyes and saying it is dark. It is time to take those hands away from our eyes. And actually the eyes are the eyes that look within, that look inward. In me is the Atman, in me is Brahman, or in a specific form, whatever form of divinity we're devoted to. In me is the reality of Krishna, Rama, Sri Ramakrishna, Jesus, Buddha. In me is that reality. I feel the presence of that within. Now, is that actually within? The point is there's no within and no without. It is only that. We more and more, we would begin to perceive that that thing, that consciousness, that divinity, that holiness we feel within ourselves is actually present everywhere. So the goal is to feel every moment, not just when you're sitting down for meditation, at other times you do what you want, but every moment I should feel that all my actions are within the sight of that reality, that that reality is within me, within every perception. That reality is the goal within all these ornaments. You are the ornaments. And within that reality, what is the goal? It's that divine spirit, it's divinity, it's infinity, it's the presence of whatever I consider to be supreme and holy within each one. That is what I want to constantly feel. Whatever I see in every perception, I want to feel the presence of that holy object which I treasure in my heart. And you say, well, that's an imagination. Well, it's through imagination that you begin to get an entrance into that reality. And if that imagination does not turn out to be true, then there's nothing in the world that will manifest this for you. But as you go into that, as you begin to perceive that reality within, it becomes ever more true, ever more convincing that this is the right path. Every spiritual path, or every path altogether, should be a self-justifying path. As one proceeds, if you demand it's only at the end of the path you're going to feel the rightness of it, then who would undertake these? So much austerity, so much effort. No, it is a self-justifying path. As you go along, you begin to feel the reality of it. You have an idea that this is the way to proceed. This is not just a theory. It is not just something that I look at and as a reasonable solution to the problem of life. No. As I advance it or as I practice it, I feel an inner conviction or an inner justification, an inner proof that that reality really is there. If I got no proof of it, then slowly enthusiasm would dwindle and all that. But people have found, as they go more and more into this, that proof becomes ever more precious to them, ever more significant, ever more real. So this is the reality of the infinite. It's something we have to work on. It's not something that becomes necessarily immediately apparent. It could, but as we work on it, we find ourselves enlarging, our view enlarging, our satisfaction, our consciousness enlarging, and the sweetness of it enlarging. And that is what makes us feel that we are on a path that is leading somewhere. And where it leads is to that infinite. Thank you. The subject for next Sunday is a word to the wise. This talk will be given by Pravrajika Amaraprana. Childcare is provided during our Sunday lectures. On Wednesday evenings, we have Vespers and meditation at 7:30 p.m. There will be no Friday evening class on Patanjali's Yoga Sutras until November. On Sundays, all are welcome to use the library from 12:30 to 2:30 p.m. You and your friends are cordially invited to attend all of these services. As usual, after the lecture, there will be a question and answer session in Vivekananda Hall, and all are welcome. Om Dhyau Shanti Antariksham Shanti Prithivi Shanti Apo Shanti Roshadaya Shanti Vanaspataya Shanti Vishwe Deva Shanti Brahma Shanti Sarvam Shanti Shantireva Shanti Sama Shantiredhi Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. Peace is in heaven. Peace is in the sky, on the earth, and in the waters. The herbs, the plants, and the trees are full of peace. The gods are peaceful. Everything in the universe is pervaded by peace. May that infinite, universal peace enter our soul and being. Om. Peace, peace, peace be unto us all.